either video or animation to deliver an end result. I work with a lot of different extremely talented people, special effects, motion graphics designers, editors, camera operators, and come up with ideas on how to present content to an audience. So all those things get put together to deliver the things that you see, whether that's online or on TV or wherever. And I've been working with big data now for about 10 years. I'm also a chartered marketeer, so one of my first questions with any kind of content is to work out who it's for and why. I'm going back a step firstly though. Why do we watch TV? Or rather, why do you watch TV? I suppose the simple answer is because you want to, or because you have to. And that one's maybe if you're told to watch something by a parent or a teacher, for example. And apart from eating and sleeping, TV is probably way up there on a list of things you probably like doing. We watch TV for lots of other reasons too, to unwind, to de-stress, spend time with family, fill in boredom. But there are also social and psychological issues that drive what you watch and why you watch it. Now, those can include demographics, age, gender, race, income, education, among other things, but can also include moods, motivations, behaviours. Understanding how and why people choose to watch TV is big business. And every year, £7.5 billion is invested in the production and distribution of programme content.
If this is
questions with any kind of content is to work out who it's for and why. And going back a step firstly though, why do we watch TV? Or rather, why do you watch TV? I suppose the simple answer is because you want to, or because you have to. And that one's maybe if you're told to watch something by a parent or a teacher, for example. And apart from eating and sleeping, TV is probably way up there on a list of things you probably like doing. We watch TV for lots of other reasons too, to unwind, to de-stress, spend time with family, fill in boredom. But there are also social and psychological issues that drive what you watch and why you watch it. Now, those can include demographics, age, gender, race, income, education, among other things, but can also include moods, motivations, behaviours. Understanding how and why people choose to watch TV is big business. And every year, £7.5 billion is invested in the production and distribution of programme content. So that's the why. What about the who? Well, content needs to be created for your key audience, not yourself. So although you might like a particular pop star or amazing pop tune, or enjoy Sam and Cat on TV or see BBC, I probably wouldn't put references to those in a video that you're making if someone your age isn't the main audience. So when creating the STATWARS competition and you've got to do your 60-second video pitch, do your research and find out who your audience is, who will be watching your video, and collate a little bit of data about them, because then whatever you're making will appeal to them. So where does data come in within TV and content? Well, data is used to help decision making by production companies and TV channels to decide how to spend their money and work out what to make that people, for people to view, to actually watch, that they'll be interested in. There's no point making a programme if no one's going to watch it. BARB, which is the Broadcasters Audience Research Board, has lots of data that may be of use to you, particularly with the STATWARS competition. So their data can tell you who's watching, what they're watching, when are they watching, which screen they're watching on, and how did the content get to that screen. Companies use this data to create and pitch content to channels and big networks, and they then get things made. It's not to say they don't get it wrong. There's plenty of movies that end up as expensive flops, or TV programs that end up on the cutting room floor. So sometimes audiences take time to grow loyalty to a particular program, but the more accurate data that companies have, the more successful a program is likely to be. So now we'll talk a little bit about content. So you've now worked out who watches and why. What about the specific content? What's your video or program going to be about? What is it going to do? What's it going to say? So people forget that TV and video content is actually really powerful, more so often than pen and paper. It can shape how we think, our buying behaviours, even our political preferences, and can affect our cognitive ability. All that actually means is simply how we think, feel and interact. It can all be influenced by what we watch. All you have to do is look at the latest commercials to see that. Think what made you want that latest Lego set or new toy, especially around Christmas. In the STATWARS competition, you need to use data to develop a concept for what would be a future production. Will it be a drama, a documentary, a soap, a box set, a sports show? Have a research, look thoroughly, see what's popular. Why is data so important though? Now, for a production to be successful and ultimately make money, that data is key, but more importantly, it's key to get the right data. And it's also really important to realise that not all data is good, and it's not always presented very well either. So there's no point having a ton of data that can give you really amazing insights from it if you can't analyse it and make decisions. So if you're not asking the right questions or collating the right data or doing the right analysis, all you end up with is a ton of numbers. So to give an example of poor data collection, Netflix, a long time ago, they used to ask customers what they wanted to watch. And customers came back with dramas and documentaries. And so Netflix then suggested those type of programs to its customers. And then they wondered why people didn't watch them. The simplest reason is the method of collecting the data was wrong. And it didn't mean anything. People often tell you what they think you want to hear. It's a little bit like social media and Facebook, when everyone presents the side of themselves they want other people to see, maybe not the real them. So they were telling Netflix what they thought they wanted to hear or how they wanted to appear to other people, you know, watching dramas or highbrow documentaries or whatever. So Netflix then changed its strategy and started looking at the true data. What did people actually watch? What was their viewing behaviours? And this worked. And they could then suggest programs through the application to actually give people suggestions based on their viewing behaviours. So if they've watched a ton of box sets or they're into crime, they would suggest different crime sort of suggestions and programs for them to watch. So I guess think about your audience. You know, what do they view? When do they view it? How do they view it? Look at the viewing figures and what program types are successful, and that will really help you in this STATWARS competition. And what about creativity? So content, not just for TV or animation, but for everything that you deliver, comes under 5 different headings that make people watch. So always ask yourself if what you're making, especially in your pitch, is either entertaining, educational, informative, emotive, and most of all, engaging. It can be a mix of any of those, or one of them, but if it has none of them, people won't watch. Now, going into what makes successful engaging content would take me hours instead of a few minutes in an interview or presentation, but in a nutshell, you need to do your research for the STATWARS competition, and as I say, work out what makes some programs successful over others. Why do some programs fail and others succeed? And that's the same with any content, you know, video content for corporate as well as TV, as well as film. Sometimes it can be a title, it can be the script, it can be the narrative, it can be the presenters or lead characters. It can even be a title sequence as well. the music, the editing, the time slot, the data shown. Someone could be running out of money to create their program or series. Some shows also take time to grow an audience, so they may not be an immediate success. Take The Greatest Showman film as an example. It took a while for word of mouth to spread, and then it had several waves of secondary success. There's lots of things that combine to create a success when it comes to content, and also a lot of things for failure as well, but it's the same with corporate video. So once you've researched your data and come up with your program, your next challenge is to present it well. So how to present data in an engaging way. Now, presenting data is a challenge. It's one that I love. And our company, which is the Risk and Business Analytics segment of RELX, is huge. We have 30,000 people in about 40 countries globally. And I've been lucky enough in my job to travel globally and film amazing experts all over the world and work with incredible people to create fun characters and different ways and methods of telling our stories and also promoting products and services. Now, we also look at the analytics and metrics to see what works in business for our audiences. For example, if I've created a video on a particular product, the company may then offer a free trial, and our analytics can actually tell us who's viewed the video, who's gone on to have the free trial, and then who's gone on ultimately to buy. Now, our data is varied, and it covers agriculture, aviation, finance, property, HR, amongst others. And as a company, we help scientists make new discoveries, doctors and nurses improve the lives of patients, lawyers win cases, we prevent online fraud and money laundering, and help insurance companies evaluate and predict risk. And we have some amazing events with read exhibitions as well. So in short, we enable our customers to make better decisions, get better results, and be more productive. Video can play a large part in that, but essentially it's the data. It's the data that's key, and it's something that our company excels in. Now, raw data itself is a lot of maths and figures and graphs, and it's information that can be quite technical. But the key for me is taking that information or content from my clients or from the marketing teams, pulling out the key details and putting that into a story. And it's back to basics again. You know, who's the video for? What's it about? What story do you want to tell? What messages do you want to get across? What tone, what style? And more importantly, where is the video going to be shown? Because that's really key as well. And what do you want it to do? Is it to sell something? Is it to make someone aware of a particular service or product or brand name? Is it launching a new service? Is it telling someone how to use a particular product? But all I can say is that having years in the industry, I've also learnt how to use data to determine what works and what doesn't, what duration it needs to be for what end medium. For example, you wouldn't put like a 60-minute documentary style content online if you know that the data tells you most people view on their phone. People dip in and out of mobile phones, so the content needs to be short. I also know that if a voiceover artist I listen to has a very monotone voice and no intonation, people will probably last 10 seconds before switching off because it's not interesting, it's dull, and it's making you go to sleep. You would be surprised how poor audio and sound can make your viewer switch off immediately, no matter how good your content is. Even in new situations and live action scenes, you can sometimes get away with poor visuals. It's live, it's instant. People sometimes expect visuals not to be that great. But you can never get away with poor audio. It just doesn't work. So you're constantly looking at the different components that make up your video and what's going to work and what isn't. But generally for my job, I'm always starting with a vision at the very end before I begin. I know how it should look, what it should say, and it's pre-planned. You can't just pick up a camera and go and make a blockbuster. The planning is so important. And for me, if someone doesn't watch or the video doesn't work, there's a problem. So you want to identify any problems or issues before you begin and prepare for the worst case scenario. So when I'm shooting or out on location with a team of cameramen or women, whether that's in the middle of the desert or a field in Norfolk, I need to know the data too. I need to know the location, the timings, the weather, the movement of the sun for shadows and lighting issues. Are there going to be any audio issues? You know, animals, noise, aircrafts. Where am I going to get power from? What's going to happen if it rains? There's always got to be a backup plan. You know, what happens if the equipment breaks? What happens if someone doesn't turn up? There's always a plan A and B and C, and generally things take longer than expected when you're filming. Always be prepared for that. Now, presenting content is fun, and it's a challenge, and there are a million different ways to present something. In the competition, you need to do a pitch, and it's only 60 seconds. It goes quick. So I'll end with just a few tips for you. Firstly, if you are using a mobile phone to film, please film everything landscape. Do not hold your phone in portrait mode, which is that way up. I want it on its side. No screens are portrait. They're not shaped like that. And no one likes viewing portrait on a TV screen or computer screen. So that is key, landscape only. Keep the phone still and at eye level, and get straight to the key messages. Think about what, why, who, when and where, and back all your decisions up by data. That's key for this competition. And whatever your choices are, we need to know why you've made them, where you've sourced your data from. Don't make it up. And the big no with data is don't presume anything. Check it out. 60 seconds isn't long, so maybe write out a script. Think about a good, strong summary as a beginning. And like any story, a beginning, middle and end is really important. And you may want to think about how are you going to illustrate those points, whether it's photos, drawings, PowerPoint slides, because it's very good to make reference to them. It's all very well having a person talking on a screen, but obviously things going on or things that you can look at are far more visually important and engaging to your audience as well. So read it out loud and practice your script. The written word is very different to the spoken word, and it's a big mistake that many people make when creating content. It's a real passion, and taking the complex and making it easy to understand for the viewer is a real skill to try and get your head around. So heavy detailed information does not work well in video. In fact, it rarely looks good in print too. So be clear but not heavy in your content. If in doubt, break it down into several bite-sized images or sections. And remember, have fun with it. Be human, be passionate about your content, and be passionate about this competition and what you're doing. And this is a great opportunity. Now, when it comes to video, they always say less is often more. So I think that's a very good time for me to stop and maybe answer some questions. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you everyone, and thank you Jayne for that amazing presentation there. I'm just going to make sure your webcam is working there, Jayne. Perfect, I can see you now. Fantastic, so we'll just go to some questions now after that fantastic presentation. So the first one I can see here is, how did you get involved in this career?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I went to university. I did a degree in design and media management. And basically, I knocked on the van of a BBC door whilst I was actually doing my degree. And I worked at the clothes show, which was like London Fashion Week at the time. And it was just something I really enjoyed and got interested in. Yeah, it was fantastic. So, and then I kind of built my way up through the industry. Everybody starts off as a runner, which is literally running around, grabbing tea and coffee, kind of observing what's going on. And then, yeah.
So the next question, this is from Anonymous, so I'm not sure who it's from, but it says, what would be your advice for creating a 60-second video pitch?
Okay, well, I touched on some of those points, obviously, during the presentation. The first thing is planning. 60 seconds really isn't long. Oh, sorry, the rain's just started to come down. I don't know if you've heard that. So yeah, 60 seconds really isn't very long, but there's an awful lot you can get across in it. In fact, they've actually started doing 1-minute films, competitions doing 1-minute films actually. So you have to be very careful with what you say and what you do. So plan it out, do a script, really pull out the key points of what you're trying to get across. It's a summary, so you have to sell the sizzle, not the steak. So not all the tiny detail, but basically what is your message? If you had to sell it in, if you had a sentence in an elevator, which is why they call it an elevator pitch, the time it takes to get from floor to floor, you need to be able to sell to someone else what it is that you've been doing in a competition and why.
Brilliant. So the next one from Marie is, she says, I was interested that it's important to ask the right questions of data to get useful answers. But who would you suggest to ask to get help picking the right question?
Data is very interesting because obviously if you asked 50 people in a room, you're going to get a very different question from if you ask 50,000 people. Do you know what I mean? But equally, asking people and doing market research doesn't always get you the right answers. So that's why the Netflix kind of example that I gave was a very good one, because they asked people, but the information they got back was wrong. So sometimes asking people isn't the right way to go about getting data. So BARB, which was the Broadcasting Audience Research Board, they collate the data from people's viewing habits. So, that's going to be probably a more accurate way of getting data. But have a look online. Those data the data that has probably a wider number of people getting involved in it is probably a good place to start. But I definitely not go on actually speaking to individuals, because you're only going to get a very small sort of segment of information and sort of details back from them.
So we've got, thank you, Jayne. We've got a question here from Jen. What are your interests outside of work?
Seeing my friends. I enjoy socialising when I'm allowed to. Obviously not at the moment. Seeing friends, working out, fitness, travel as well. I love travel. I'd much rather spend money on an EasyJet flight to somewhere I've never heard of than buy a pair of shoes. And I think the love of travel came, I used to do travel programs as well. I was very lucky enough to be paid to go to places to actually film things. So I probably kind of got a love of travel from that as well.
I think that kind of goes into the question that's been asked here. So how did you get your job? And she said that the travel sounds really fun. What did you study and do before?
Well, as I say, my degree was design and media management, and I started off in post-production, which is basically the end part of the production process. So pre-production is all the planning, production's the actual going out and filming and delivering the production, post-production, things like the editing, the special effects, the sound, that kind of thing. And I was very, very lucky enough to work for some amazing companies and did things like the title sequence to the Muppet movie, which was fantastic. We did a lot with Aardman Animation as well, so they do Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers, for example. So I've worked for some amazing companies, and then weirdly enough, I wanted to move from post-production into pre-production and kind of be at the beginning of the creative process instead of the end. And my way to do that was I took a bit of a gap year, shall we say, and I went off and worked as an air hostess for British Airways. So funnily enough, that got me travelling a lot. I did that for a little while. And then when I came back into the beginning of the creative process, I then started doing travel programmes because of my background with travel and with TV. So it was kind of like a good mix, a very strange one, obviously, but yeah. And so I was very lucky enough to see some amazing places, travel to some weird and wonderful places, and experience different things as well, because filming on location and filming abroad while traveling is very different to being in the UK. You know, you have everything to hand, you speak the language, the weather's pretty much, you know what it's going to be like. Whereas, you know, if you're in the middle of a desert, if you're in the middle of a cloud forest, you know, if you're in Honduras, for example, which I was for a month, there's no one around there to help you. And quite, you know, in Honduras, for example, we had armed guards with us. It was quite a dangerous place to film. So there's lots of different things that come into filming, but it all adds to your experience so that basically whatever you're faced with, you can deal with for the next time.
Brilliant. So the next one we've got is what inspires you when you watch TV, Jayne?
I am the worst person to watch TV with. I really am, because I will pick out every single fault that everyone else has done. So you can't sit there and watch a program with me because I say, oh, that they shouldn't have done that, and there's a gap there, and that edit's wrong. So no, I'm probably the worst person. But it inspires me if it's different, if it doesn't follow a formula. And if it breaks barriers, creative barriers. Because for me, you know, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy finds girl, happy ending. That's quite traditional. So I like things that have a twist. And if something surprises me, that's a really good thing, and I love it.
From Jason is, how do you strike the balance between high quality yet authentic? He's put in brackets, perfectly imperfect. Video content.
Oh gosh, well, do you know what, it's interesting because I think there's room for high quality, but obviously there's room for kind of low quality things as well. So for example, if your video has, you know, a couple of viewers and it's an internal thing at work or anything else like that, then you can pretty much do it yourself and hand it in, fine. But say for example, you create something and it's going out to a very wide audience and it's representing your company and your brand, and it looks poor and the audio is poor and the visuals are a bit something like you do at college, you know what I mean? It's kind of thrown together. That's exactly what they're going to think of your company. So for external kind of high-end things, obviously you've got to invest and make it look to a certain quality, because we've grown up in an age of, you know, kind of 3D animation, video games, quality's high. So, and also there's lots of kind of apps and equipment out there these days. So there's no excuse for it to be really poor, but equally there's certain situations where you can kind of get away with it more for. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? So it depends on where it's shown, who it's shown to, what its purpose is.
The next one we've got here, what do you think will change in the next 3 years for film?
Well, I went to Amsterdam last year before obviously the current lockdown situation, and it was all about tomorrow's TV and video basically. So films are all being made in the cloud. They're all kind of moving to the cloud, which is quite interesting. So you've got multiple people kind of working on the cloud rather than individually. The future of TV and film is like computers as well. We're going to have quantum, which is, again, everything's faster, quicker, more amazing. So the amount of data is going to be incredible. There could even be an unhackable internet as well. So that's kind of quite an interesting way. There could be more film on the internet because it's going to be quicker and easier to watch. But as far as kind of technology and, you know, sort of special effects and everything else, I think every single day we're breaking barriers and doing incredible things. It's phenomenal. You know, the fact that the Avengers film, there was an entire, I think they filmed about 2 or 3 films all at the same time, and then in one of them they changed the costumes. So they had to go back to an entire sequence where people were walking and talking and change their whole outfits. But in the end film, you couldn't even tell that was all done in special effects.
We've got a really nice question here. So what's the most exciting production you have worked on that we would recognise? Pet rescue. Probably maybe not the most exciting to you. I've worked on so many different things. I worked on MotoGP, which is motorcycling, Le Mans 24 hours. I did a lot of motorsports as well. But pet rescue for me was the most
amazing thing to work on. And they say never work with children and animals, really, but I've worked with both and loved them. And I love the unpredictability of it. I love, I don't know, I think it's the heartwarming stories of kind of rescuing an animal, looking after it, and then releasing it into the wild. And, you know, I got to learn an awful lot about different animals and see seals being released. And yeah, it was really fun.
So we go on here, focusing more on kind of data. So where can you get access to data? It's quite a general question.
Oh gosh, well, a lot of data is available. As I say, BARB was probably the best one for the STATWARS film. As for other data, it's an interesting thing, because a little bit, if you look at our company, for example, we have data on, I'll take just one of the areas, which is aviation. So British Airways will have its own data on its own schedules, and if you wanted to, you can go and look at those and you'll know all the airline schedules for British Airways. But British Airways isn't likely to know Air New Zealand or Emirates or another airlines. So as a company, we've collated everybody's, the whole world's airline schedules. So whenever you're, for example, on a flight and you look on an app and you want to know when your flight's arriving or leaving or taking off, or who's flying right now, or even if you're booking a flight, it's our company's data that can probably tell you who can take you from A to B and when you can get there and what sort of times those flights leave and arrive at. So the data's available, but it's who's actually collated it all. So it's worth having a look on Google search, depending on whether you're doing the climate one or the film and TV one, to see who are the companies and who are the people that are collating the information that you require.
We've got you on here. So what are your favourite programmes and why, Jayne?
Oh, well, I love Marvel, which is my escapism, and I watch Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who, and I watch it every single day with my daughter, and she's 10. There's just something about that which I think is magical, and the fact that it's been going for over 50 years is incredible. So that's my probably guilty pleasure, I suppose, Doctor Who. But I love things that, as I say, are creative, but I have a wide range. I don't stick to one genre, because my background is film and TV. I'll watch anything and everything, even those videos that are really badly rated on IMDb, just because I want to know what they've done wrong, which is very strange. But yeah, no, I like true documentaries. I like dramas. I like crime programs. I like mystery programs. But yeah, I do love Doctor Who.
Just following up on that, they're obviously kind of science fiction programs and Marvel kind of superhero programs as well. Have you ever worked on something like that before?
Oh gosh, have I ever made robots and escapism? No, I mean, I have kind of created animations which are obviously, you know, obviously we're creating those out of nothing. But no, not really. It's probably not the genre that I've been involved in so much, but no.
We've got a question here. So I think you kind of talked about how you kind of got into your career now. So it says, how did you decide what degree to do?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think I did when I was younger and at college. I did hospital radio. So I kind of started getting into the whole broadcast sort of industry, and I loved writing. And the degree that I chose was very interesting because there weren't any exams, so that was quite appealing because I didn't really like exams when I was younger. So it was all coursework. And so everything's kind of project-led with a deadline, which is what I do now. So it was perfect for me. But the degree was fantastic because there were so many different aspects of it that you could learn about the industry. So there's everything from radio to TV to audio to animation and so the nice thing for me is that I hadn't decided. I think when you're young, and some people even at the age of 40 or 50 still don't know what they want to do as a career, to be honest, or what they want to do with their lives. So, you know, at that age, it's very difficult for someone to say, what do you want to do? So the nice thing about the degree for me is that it had so many different things for me to try out, and then I could actually see what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, and then I could specialise in that.
The next question we have is, what data would you like to make a film of?
What data would I like to make a film of? Do you know what? I'd quite like to make a film probably about, oh gosh, that's a difficult question. What data would I like to make a film of? Is it difficult to get people to explain what it is? I've just read the question from Susan. I've just answered your question because you've asked me and I'm finding it difficult. It's sometimes very difficult for people to get across what's in their head, if that makes sense. You have an idea, you have a vision, you know what you want to create, but sometimes it's very hard to kind of get that across. And I suppose, what data would I like to make a film of? Oh, gosh, that's opening things up to me. I would like to make a film of anything that enabled me to use a ton of toys, because that's a filmmaker's dream, is actually having the budget to be able to use all of the toys. So I would purposely look for data that enabled me to grab all the drones, grab all the special effects, make explosions. So yeah, I'd probably look for data for, I don't know, maybe a company that did mining, so I could have a ton of explosions and make some amazing documentary on the purpose of why they're mining and where that's going to go, what it's going to do.
Next, thank you, Jayne. The next one is asking about, is there any good free software for making video? Obviously, you use software, Jayne. Maybe for those who are starting out, is there any good free software?
Oh, there's tons. I don't actually create any of these things. I get other people to do them. I used to make them myself. I used to self-shoot and do all the camera work, but now I direct, and obviously I manage whole global department. So, but as for free software, I haven't looked recently, but I know there are loads. So there's lots of different editing software that you can begin with. There's also basic animations. I mean, I know my 10-year-olds found some basic animation stuff online. So I suggest going on Google search and having a look and trying them out, because some of them are easier to use than others. But there's a lot of information online, and there's everything from editing to animation to sound design, and you can learn about all the different areas within video. So things like Foley artists I find quite fascinating. So Foley artist's job, for example, in a film, they take away all the audio. Like there is no audio at all, and they literally lay down every single footstep, breathing, the music, the effects, every single thing is very carefully laid and designed for a film, and I find that job incredibly fascinating. It's quite tricky, but very detailed.
Really nice question here. So who do you admire most in the data science community, and why?
Oh, do you know what? I have to say, the people that at my company, we've got a ton of data scientists and they work incredibly hard. But I think it's some of the things that they do with data can be used for good. So, you know, yes, it's used in big business. It's used for everything that we make, everything that we do. But also I quite like the fact that it can be used for corporate responsibility as well. So, for example, there is a company in America called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And basically, when a child goes missing in America, a red alert flags up, basically. So years and years and years ago, it was very difficult to get an image of that child out to everybody within a certain radius. So our data and our information, because we own LexisNexis Risk, so they collect, you know, sort of data on people for insurance purposes and that kind of thing. So our data and information was given to the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. And so far it's brought, I think, over a good few hundred children home. when they've been missing, which has been amazing. So what happens is when a child goes missing in a certain place, within say like a mile's radius, their photograph is suddenly up everywhere. It's alerted on people's phones, it's on billboards, it's at airports, it's everywhere. And so something like that for me is amazing, and that's such a really good, powerful, heartwarming use of data. And funnily enough, you know, at the beginning they never thought that it could be used in that way. They just suddenly realized actually it can do this. They'd find it helpful, and so we literally gave them all the information, and they've been able to do something incredible with it. So
I think we'll do a couple more questions. Is that okay, Jayne?
Yeah, that's fine.
Fantastic. So we'll do this one first. What do you think are the most interesting jobs in your industry?
Well, I mentioned Foley artists. I thought that's fantastic. Special effects, I absolutely love. I got involved in those when I was working with Aardman Animation many years ago, and that was the creature comfort ads before they did sort of Wrong Trousers and the films. And I just think the idea of taking nothing and creating it into something is just incredible. You know, I could take what have I got here? I could take my mobile phone and make a video about it. Now, I could literally just film it as it is. I could give it legs. It could walk. Do you know what I mean? I think the creativity of being able to take something quite plain and make it so it's interesting and exciting to people is fantastic. And that's part of the challenge with data as well, because, you know, data can be quite dull. It's a lot of numbers, it's maths, it's, you know, computers working out problems, but actually it's what that data does, which for me I find quite fascinating.
I like how you mentioned the creature comforts. I remember those as well. I think they were fantastic. I used to really enjoy those.
Yeah, they were great.
We've got a really good question. I think this would be a really good one to kind of end on, Jayne. So it says, have you got any last wise words for all our stat warriors who are starting out?
I think this is an incredible competition. I think you've got such a lovely opportunity here to be able to just go wild, you know, choose an amazing, you know, program or series or whatever it is you want to make, and really go for it. This is such a great opportunity for you to be able to get yourselves noticed, take part in, I don't know, just learn some amazing stuff as well. You know, the fact that it's so involved and gives you the opportunity to get into this industry is great too. But for me, the thing that I really enjoyed about it was the fact that a lot of people kind of think that STEM jobs, so science, technology, etc., are not linked to creative industries. I think that's kind of like a misconception, because actually they combine, because the power of the two combining is you know, makes for such a great, what's the point in having something so technical and so heavy and everything else if you can't present it and show someone it, you know, because then they're never going to purchase it, they're never going to get involved with your products and services, are they? So does that make sense?
Oh, of course, yeah. Thank you, Jayne. I just want to say a big thank you to all those who have been watching today and been sending in their questions. I think Jayne will agree, there've been some amazing questions there, and I hope you've enjoyed answering those there, Jayne.
Oh, they've been incredible. Some of them a bit tricky to think on my feet, so hope I've answered them well enough. But
I also want to say a big thank you to you, Jayne, for taking time out of, I think it's been your past few weeks, to do this for us today. And thank you for your presentation and answering all those questions. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulty, so I apologise for that at the start, but I think we got through it after that, and I think it was a fantastic presentation. So thank you for that, Jayne.
Well, that's live TV.
It is. I hope you have all been inspired to take on our Stat Wars competition there and use our resources on our website at statwarscompetition.com to help you. And please join us for our upcoming interviews as well. I think thank you for everyone again for joining. I think we'll end it there. Thank you to you, Jayne.
Welcome. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.